Vasilis Koliasos, and I would like to welcome you all tonight on behalf of the Society for the Preservation of Greek Heritage. We have extraordinary advantage on the restoration of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and related discoveries that is co-sponsored by the Greek Embassy, and on this occasion we'd like to thank the Ambassador for his hospitality in this wonderful corner of Greekness in Washington, D.C., and also the staff of the Embassy for working with us to put this event together. SPGH is a heritage society, is not a religious society. And let me say right away, we recognize that the matter of the Holy Sepulchre, the holy site of Christendom, is certainly beyond Hellenism, and is well beyond the Greek Orthodox Church. At the same time, Hellenism and Christianity have deep-rooted affinities, if not for the 1,000-year fraternization through the Byzantine era, in the era of the Greek, of the Eastern Roman Empire. And the identity of the Eastern Romans, Greeks somehow, was very much religious and Christian. We're also proud for the role the Greek Patriarchate plays very much along with other churches and denominations, and on this occasion I would like to greet our friars, the Franciscan friars, and the guardian of the Holy Sepulchre who's with us tonight. We're honored, sir. And I would also like to say how poignant it is that in today's Greece, it is one of the institutions of higher learning in Greece, the Athens Polytechnic, at the helm of the effort to restore the Sepulchre. So the whole thing is coming together, full cycle, to show this perpetuity through the ages. And this is becoming an issue of heritage, and this is where our society comes into the frame. So I wish you all to have a pleasant but also meaningful evening. And I would now like to ask the Greek Ambassador to the United States, Mr. Larakos, to greet our gathering. Mr. Ambassador.
Αγαπητοί συμπατριώτες, εκλεκτοί προσκεκλημένοι, καλησπέρα σας και καλώς ήρθατε. Distinguished guests, it's a pleasure to welcome all of you, Greeks and friends of Greece and the Greek culture, to the embassy tonight for this most exciting panel discussion. But our pleasure tonight is severely mitigated by the mourning that has been officially declared in Greece for 3 days, for the tragic loss of so many human lives as a result of flash floods in the region of Attica. Undoubtedly, on your way to this meeting, you saw that the embassy flags are flying at half-mast. And for this, I would like to ask you to be upstanding, and let's keep a moment of silence in memory of the victims of these floods. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So, without further ado, let me invite to the podium Her Excellency Lydia Konorou, the Culture Minister of the Hellenic Republic, who will bring us a greeting from the Hellenic government in Athens. Madam Minister.
Your Excellency, Mr. President of SPGH, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to address the event hosted here at the Embassy of Greece in Washington today for the restoration of the Holy Sepulchre and to acknowledge the initiative of the Society for the Preservation of the Greek Heritage in the organization of this event, as well as its significant contribution to reveal the ecumenical heritage of Hellenism. As the Prime Minister of Greece emphasized during the project's completion ceremony in March, the innovative know-how that the National Technical University of Athens applied in the rehabilitation of the Holy Edicule is indicative of the great potential of Greece in the protection of world cultural heritage. We must acknowledge the invaluable contribution of the NTUA interdisciplinary team for the protection of monuments, headed by Professor Antonia Moropoulou and comprised by Emeritus Professor Emanuel Kores from the School of Architecture, Professor Andreas Georgopoulos from the School of Rural and Surveying Engineering, Professor Antonia Moropoulou from the School of Chemical Engineering, Professor Konstantin Spirakos, and Assistant Professor Karalambos Mouzakis from the School of Civil Engineering. Over 50 scientific and education personnel of the NTUA and scientific collaborators, the Greek teams of restorers, masons, and conservators, 2 of which were detached from the Ministry of Culture to the National Technical University of Athens for the duration of the project, all gave their best for this amazing aim. We express our gratitude to the 3 Christian communities, guardians of the Holy Sepulchre, the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Jerusalem, the Franciscan Order, the Custody of the Holy Land, and the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem for entrusting to us this unique moment. We wish to emphasize that the international cooperation and most importantly the donation of the World Monument Fund to the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Jerusalem, as well as the air bridge generously launched by Aegean Airlines, connecting the National Technical University of Athens with the Holy Sepulchre, as well as all donations from big to small donors all over the world, played a decisive role. This project was accomplished by the scientific Greek team with the full support of the 3 Christian communities of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, of all the world. And I would like to specifically acknowledge the decisive role of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America and of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. The continuous presence and interest of the Prime Minister of Greece highlighted and enhanced the bridges linking Greece and Jerusalem and the perspectives for mutual understanding and peaceful coexistence in the broader Euro-Mediterranean area. Yesterday, at the National Geographic Museum, this unique moment of world cultural heritage of the Christian world and of all the world came to life. The virtual representation of the rehabilitation project implemented by the NTUA highlights that Greece is at the forefront of new technologies for the protection of the world cultural heritage. The Greek Ministry of Culture has an ongoing stable collaboration with NTUA for major projects like the Acropolis and recently for the emblematic bridge of Plaka. National Geographic has been a strategic partner of the Christian communities and the National Technical University of Athens in the dissemination of the news and the findings during the opening of the tomb from the National Technical University of Athens to all the world. The exhibition that opened in Washington is of interest to everyone and has a future in the whole world. It turns a new page of presenting our common cultural heritage through technology in a fascinating way, especially for the younger generation. The Ministry of Culture and Sports and the National Technical University of Athens are preparing an exhibition within the theme, the Holy Tomb, the Monument, and the project of the Holy Edicule Rehabilitation by the National Technical University of Athens, which will be open to the public from May 21 to October 26, 2018 at the Byzantine and Christian Museum in Athens. In parallel, the Ministry of Culture and Sports and the National Technical University of Athens are co-organizing an international conference between May 22 and May 24, 2018 on innovation and multidimensional modeling for the preservation of cultural heritage. I would like to stress this long-going collaboration, and with the occasion of the European Year of Cultural Heritage 2018, we are addressing a call to all the world to apply the advanced knowledge and the innovation produced by the centers of science in order to achieve a sustainable presentation of cultural heritage effectively associated with development to the benefit of society. Concluding, we cannot but underline the collectiveness and the dialogue established multi-dynamically during the project among the actors, honoring the democratic traditions of Greece and of the National Technical University of Athens, which, like today, on the 17th of November 1973, and for the last 44 years, inscribed their important messages to keep the heritage of democracy alive as a legacy for the generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Minister. And now on to the main feature of tonight's event. We will start with Professor Antonia Moropoulou. Your name has already been heard so many times tonight. Mrs. Moropoulou is Professor and Vice Rector of our Polytechnion, the National Technical University of Athens, and also President of the General Assembly of the Technical Chamber of Greece. You were the Chief Scientific Supervisor of the Holy Sepulchre Restoration Project. And on this, you led a team of about 50 experts from Polytechnion who had previously worked on the Acropolis and also Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. Without further ado, I will ask you to come to the podium to give your presentation on restoration of the Holy Edicule, the ecumenical heritage of Hellenism.
Thank you, Mr. President of the Society for Preservation of Greek Heritage, Your Excellency, Mrs. Konyorgou, the Minister of Greece for Culture, Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador of Greece, distinguished guests. It's a great honor and a great pleasure to present here today the restoration of the Holy Edicule, the ecumenical heritage of Hellenism. And as you might know from your own experience, Monument Stock, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, is comprising in one monument the cavalry and the tomb of Christ. This is a unique monument where the Holy Edicule is actually covering the tomb of Christ as a free ciborium above it, concerning the second phase from the rock-cut grave to the covered by a ciborium grave, and at the last stage, as we delivered it from the restoration of Komnenos as an enclosed to a mausoleum grave. The historical aspects related to the development of this unique monument for the Christian world, and not only, is a sequence of destructions and restorations from the Constantinian era, when it was constructed, to the Byzantine period, to the Crusaders period, to the Renaissance restoration, up to the Komnenos restoration at 1810. And as you might see, the transformation of the Holy Edicule is impressive, but it's enclosing history and the unity as it was transpassing from the various historic periods. After the Renaissance restoration from Bonifacio di Ragusa, it was depicted and it was well acquainted and known by the world. It was represented even up to the Komnenos restoration through gravures, and it was diffused through many objects of art, and it was replicated around Europe. This is the Holy Edicule, upon which we were invited by Theophilus III, the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem, to negate its deformation. The interdisciplinary team for the protection of monuments from NTUA was capable enough to develop an interdisciplinary methodology for documentation, architectural, historical, structural, materials characterization, to perform the integrated diagnosis concerning the decay and the pathology of the structure, and to finalize proposals in order to address the challenge presented by its deformation. Deformation which was developed, which was caused due to the fact that the rainwater was falling through the oculus of the rotunda to the Holy Edicule, and was the reason that the mortars were degrading and that the masonry was swelling. And this was the fact that obliged the Israeli antiquity authorities to close the monument and did not permit the entrance of the pilgrims at the first months of 2015. The major challenge was to study a monument which was closed by the marble slabs, the stone slabs, as we discovered. And that's why we employed innovative technology, non-destructive techniques, and we discovered through the invisible, we discovered the various phases, the Holy Rock, the masonry in the consequence of the various periods, the Komnenos phase, and we developed our approach. The geometrical documentation on the 3D model permitted us, with a parallel input of materials characterization, to assess the structure by finite element modeling and develop the strategy for the rehabilitation as a sequence of various phases of intervention which were planned in a way to be minimum invasive and with maximum efficiency and compatibility. Compatibility meaning to bring together the various historic phases with modern materials and develop a structure which would live forever. And that was the basis upon which the three Christian communities, in dialogue during all the period of the study, developed a consensus, and they signed this agreement, an historical agreement, after 200 years, the first one to go ahead with the rehabilitation. And we went ahead in a way that the pilgrims would be permitted to go and kneel in front of the Holy Tomb, and that the three Christian communities would continue to worship this unique monument. And this difficult project became possible, became feasible, due to the fact that the World Monuments Fund, represented by Bonnie Burnham at this period, and today from Yannis Abramidis, with the great donation of a great benefactor, Mika Erdogan, initiated the funding of the project. And here you might see at the end, they were present. And due to the air bridge that Aegean Airlines was launching between National Technical University of Athens and the Holy Sepulchre. And this project was a result of an integrated governance. That was another level of innovation. The project owners committee, the three representatives, the three leaders of the Christian communities, with green, the scientific committee, and with blue, the people who were managing the construction site. Some of them, Professor Georgopoulos, Nikolaos Moropoulos, and Vasilis Zafiris, are with us today. That was a unique venture, a joint venture, and that was established on the basis of the scientific monitoring and continuous assessment of all the interventions in order to go the step ahead. And of course, what I said about organizing the construction site in a way not to develop problems to the pilgrims was a fact. And at the same time, we had to support, to develop new lateral support, because the iron frame that the British mandate has developed around the edicule was unable, 70 years after, to negate the deformations. Of course, the pilgrims' flow was operated in safety, and at the same time we were transforming, with the aid of the three communities, the whole environment of the Holy Sepulchre. The laboratory, the conservation laboratory in the Franciscan Gallery, the laboratories, the scientific laboratories nearby the Holy Edicule, and of course the construction site where the Greek teams of restorers were working during night and the conservators during day. So it was open 24 hours within day and night. What did we do? As you might see here, on a very accurate designed plan, we worked in the sequence of major project interventions. First, dismantling and removing the stone panels, removing the disintegrated and incompatible mortars. Some of them were put in a mysterious way, and it was cement concrete underneath the marble slabs. We reconstructed the masonry. The masonry, after swelling, had to be repaired, and we did so. The major phase after the repair was the grouting, to inject compatible and efficient grouts in order to homogenize all the various structural phases and all the materials, especially to consolidate the holy rock. And we assess the effectiveness of the grouting materials while we were within the procedure. And here you might see at this red interface that we succeeded to develop interface and to consolidate the rock. Of course, the non-destructive techniques continue to be a weapon in our hands in order to assess and evaluate what was happening. And when we reset the columns, the exterior columns of the holy edicule 1 year ago, you might see we assessed and evaluated the results through the general measurements that showed the reduction of deviations from verticality during the works, and we were using the Freeman report of the English mandate in order to have a reference. And we said, okay, here we are. We passed to the reinforcement with titanium. We cancelled the corroded iron anchors and bolts, and we planned, after pull-out tests to experiment the mechanical strength that was inferred, we planned how many and where should we install, and we performed the reinforcement according to the positions planned. We reset and anchored the interior marbles. We reinstalled the marble panels. We brought them from the conservation laboratory, from the Franciscan gallery. And we reassembled the stone slabs. And after this, we applied the optimized filling mortars, which were planned according to reverse engineering in order to reassemble the historic mortars, but being optimized with ameliorated performance according to the needs of the structure. We designed the conservation, the reinforcement, and the restoration of the onion dome, which you might see today, and you wouldn't recognize it from the black. It was our first approach to it. Of course, a metal support was designed by Professor Corres. Disinfectation was a very sophisticated intervention because we had wood and we could not cancel it. We should consolidate it, but after disinfectation. And we conserved the dome of the tomb chamber. We conserved the dome of the chapel of the angel. And the cleaning interventions within and out the monument were optimized in pilot applications, which were assessed on site and gave us the answers for the final materials and techniques to intervene. The same for the protection after the cleaning. And we came to the end of the project. The aims of the core of the project were the preservation of values, the structural integrity, and the sustainability of the holy edicule. What have we done? Concerning the structural integrity, we brought it back to the verticality as it was assessed by the deviations we saw that were diminished. We found that this model, which is unique, of the finite element modeling concerning all the data of information on 3D, on all the layers of materials and rehabilitation interventions. And we were assured that what we'll deliver is structurally integral. At that stage, we removed the iron frame. And that was a very critical moment because the fathers did not believe that it will be withstanding within its own powers. So they were there all night. But the holy edicule was free at the hands of the three communities after 70 years. 70 years, that was the lifetime, the end of lifetime of the iron frame. It was the moment to be changed. Okay, it is structurally integral. But what about the values? Because this is a unique monument. What about the values? The most important was that for first time ever, the holy rock, the archetype material of the tomb of Christ, was revealed. And we opened, as you might see, a window facing the tomb of Christ and showing the holy rock which is embracing it. We preserved the existing gilding decorations of the sculpted marbles, but we did not reproduce the Rococo intervention because that was not in the spirit of the resurrection, in the spirit of the tomb of Christ. We revealed for first time these frescoes above the tomb of Christ, the mere bearers. They were not visible, they were black, and nobody knew anything about them. And of course, we conserved the opus sectile, the decorations of the chapel of the angel, which was not very simple. And the dome exterior surfaces, from black to colors. We revealed, first time ever, the inner cupola of the onion dome. It was the sun, it was the moon, and it was the rainbow. And we revealed, as you might see, these inscriptions, which were black and black, not visible. Now they are black on the color, the beautiful color. And Komninos cross was discovered at the southeastern corner of the Holy Edicule. That was the fingerprint of the restoration we delivered. And believe me, we did not leave behind us any cross or any fingerprint. But what we left was that we revealed the values of this monument. And these values were revealed at the specific moment that we lifted the stone of the tomb of Christ, at the 26th of October. And we discovered underneath the main slab that was visible another slab, this gray slab, and we measured the morphology of the tomb of Christ, of the bedrock we discovered underneath, and we characterized the materials. It is the same type of calcareous rock on the bedrock and on the rock which is surrounding it. And we discovered that according to, in compliance with historical testimonies, this bedrock was cut and brought above because as Adrian was covered the tomb of Christ and as covered through the ground penetrating radar as well, the portholes on the second slab, the inner slab, through which the pilgrims through the centuries were touching the bedrock. Not today, but we saw that. And we dated the joint mortars we discovered, and we did not believe it. when I saw the grey slab, I said, this must be of Crusaders, but it was not. After intercalibration from 2 archaeometric laboratories, we discovered that it was from the Constantinian era. And that is an accurate finding. And we discovered that the upper slab, the one we see, was dated between the 1244, when the Mamelukes Turks destroyed the tomb of Christ, and the Renaissance restoration, the 1550 of Bonifacio di Ragusa. Of course, in Oxford, Biddle was presenting some historic testimonies about pilgrims, saying at 1350 that he had observed this decorated porphyry slab, the one of 2 parts. So there is a hypothesis for 2 centuries. Did we open the tomb 5 centuries after or 7 centuries after? Father Agliata from Terra Santa, from the Franciscan order, was sure that we opened it 500 years after. It doesn't matter. What is important is that the sequence of all the historic periods were there, and all the mortars we dated within the Holy Rock, embracing the tomb of Christ, showed the same. And all the findings we found when we detached the slabs were in sequence. The piece of marble with the decorative kymatia, the wavy pieces of marble from the Byzantine era, and the masonry from the Crusaders, and the ceramic tubes from the Komnenos restoration. All the periods were there, the one embracing the other. And when we were trying to discover what is underground, our findings showed a network of burial monuments around the tomb of Christ. And that was exactly what the archaeologists and the historians were describing. And we found it. We found it because we performed the geometric documentation of the cisterns, the underground tunnels of the church, and you might see that we know exactly what is happening in the underground world. And we investigated by non-destructive prospection all the underground structures and all the water and humidity resources. You might see from the ground penetrating radar and from the electric resistance tomography, using robots as well from the EIDAP, the National Water Agency of Greece. We performed this investigation, and that was a finding for the underground monument, but it was a finding and a warning for the great danger which is actually endangering the sustainability of the work we've done. A first factor endangering the sustainability is the attitude of the pilgrims, but it is positive. They don't crush the candles anymore against the slabs. Indeed, the rising damp is continuing to threaten the holy edicule, and not only. We delivered, along with the monument, the study for what has to be done in order to negate the differential performance of the edicule upon this underground situation. and to develop a peripheral drainage and ventilation gallery, to organize the installation of new sewage and rainwater network, because all these waters are being disposed and drained underneath the tomb of Christ. And that was the work we offered to the three communities as the challenge to continue in order to assure the sustainability of the whole work. Since they did not perform up to now to this direction, we suggested that the monitoring of the performance of the edicule to the thermohydric stresses is obligatory, is mandatory. And we installed ventilation and dehumidification through sensors that we have installed as well. And we planned in a way that we would monitor the thermohydric behavior and the dynamic behavior of the structure. And that is all there, waiting for us to press the button, because up to now, we don't have this decision. And I have to say this in public, because all of us are being responsible, not formally, but internally, for the future of this monument. What are we doing today? We are developing a platform of the data on a content basis, not on a data basis, in order to share our knowledge with the world. And we are presenting this know-how we developed because we learned from the Holy Edicule. We didn't offer only, we learned a lot from the Holy Edicule. We presented this as a European innovation to Brussels, which did not put a penny to this project. It was the world who funded it. And we completed and delivered the Holy Edicule on the level not only of the three communities, but on the level of an ecumenical reception of representative of the Pope, the ecumenical Patriarch, and the Catholic Patriarch of the Armenians. And from the Greek government, the Prime Minister was there, and there were ambassadors from all the area of contradicting and conflictual situations. And that was the Holy Edicule we delivered. We delivered it. And now we are researching our data. We are going on. In Oxford last month, we started a dialogue, continuing the dialogue with the community of archaeologists, the international community, the Israeli Antiquity authorities, the people from National Geographic, and we are not only praying, but we raise our voice and demand the sustainability decisions to be put on place. That's the Holy Edicule. What we did through innovation was only to amplify its voice. What we felt working there is that this monument is alive, and we communicated this to the world. During the various critical periods, our communication strategy of the project was to give the news to the world, but at the critical moment, to open the tomb, it was exclusively there, the National Geographic. You can see Fred. You don't see here Christine, because that's from the TV film of National Geographic this night. But Christine was writing the first approach, the first news, and you can see where she had written this. Today, from Washington, this news might embrace the world. As the Minister of Culture of Greece said, we are going to Athens. And perhaps we might go to Rome, or to Yerevan, or to other places of the world, and then go back again to Jerusalem. But I believe we have to go back to Jerusalem for monitoring before. And these are the people who worked there, who worked with their soul, their mind, their heart, and their hands. Thank you very much.
Professor Moropoulou, you do not show us an unbelievable marvel of combining science, heritage, and the environment, sustainability. But you also performed a new marvel. You covered this amazing amount of information within 25 minutes. I have no idea how you did that. I'm a professor and I could not have ever imagined having done it. And also because I'm a scientist, I have to say, what a fine science that was. The depth and the multidimensional, and what a fine institution you represent here in DC tonight. Thank you very much, and congratulations. Now, the second speaker is Professor Frederick Hibbert. Dr. Hibbert is the archaeologist in residence, like, say, the commander-in-chief or something like that, of the National Geographic Society. And previously the Robert Dyson Chair of Near Eastern Archaeology at Penn, an educator. Dr. Hibbert has traced ancient trade routes, both at land and at sea, and he has played a significant role in bringing the work of the restoration of the Holy Sepulchre, as you heard from Professor Moropoulou, to international prominence at the level of scholarship and aesthetic that is only to be expected from National Geographic. Dr. Hibbert will speak on the National Geographic perspective, coverage, and emotions. Dr. Hibbert.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here at the Embassy of Greece. Thanks to the Society, to the Embassy, to the Minister of Culture. Thank you. It's a dream that you're here for us. To the restoration team, we have 4 representatives, including Professor Moropoulou. If I may ask for all of the team leaders to stand up, because it's not just Professor Moropoulou. She is a partner of a whole team, and we're so honored to have them here. Could we have your team stand up? Good. In my 15 years of covering archaeology around the world and cultural heritage, I have never experienced a project that was so deeply personal and so deeply involved in what the world means today than this project. Every single member, the 50 members of the team who are here, they all committed themselves. They worked day and night, 24/7. They completed a project under budget, in time, to open between 2 Easters. It is, as we say, the impossible project. It was done by a team from the National Technical University of Athens. We like those kind of projects at National Geographic. We love to cover the impossible projects. This was an impossible project made possible. I'm going to tell you very briefly a little bit about how we felt covering this. We had a team from National Geographic. I'd like to say our incredible writer, Kristen Romy, who has been with us throughout the duration of the project and continues to follow one of the most amazing stories of humankind for the 21st century, the restoration of this monument. By the way, I should mention that we at National Geographic are not used to church time. Church time, the monument was restored in 1810. It took until 1959 for the three faiths to agree for its restoration. And from 1959 until 2016, they finally decided this is the moment. And we loved and we enjoyed being your partner. And thank you for letting us be embedded in your team as this project unraveled within a year, under budget, and with an incredibly committed team. In 2016 was my first trip to Jerusalem. It was an amazing experience to go to a place that was both so personally important and yet so unique. It's the epicenter of Western civilization in many ways. So many things that concern Western civilization actually concerned the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Crusades, the schism of the church, the coalescence of everything, and the communities that take care of this church. This is church at Easter, in the evening, at night, with the various communities celebrating the rejuvenation of their Christian faith. We had the most extraordinary experience of working with partners, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, Professor Antonio Moropoulou, who said, "We want to work with you so that you can bring this project to the world." And we did. National Geographic has a television channel in every single country of the world. Our magazine is published in every major language of the world. The digital version of the message of National Geographic is worldwide and global, and is perhaps our largest media outlet. And we came to this incredible laboratory. This is looking down on Antonio Moropoulou's laboratory. It is the Edicule. It's surrounded by a work area with big work lights where people would work 24/7. At the bottom of the picture, you can actually see the route that was left open during the entire conservation project for the pilgrims to follow through and enter. That's quite remarkable for anyone who's done any masonry to experience not the demolition of a structure, but the preservation of it during its conservation. It was done, as Professor Moropoulou said, through remote sensing, non-invasive methods, 21st century methodologies that we are just being acquainted with in archaeology and architectural conservation. Ground-penetrating radar, without removing the marble, can beam through the center and tell us where the original cave for the tomb of Christ was located. It created this document, unbelievable, first time ever to see inside the walls and to see that rather than having been multiple layers of complete destruction and rebuilding, they rebuilt around the former structures to the point that it became clear that the original structure of the Holy Edicule was preserved on the inside of the building. Believe me, no historian or archaeologist had known that before. This was revealed with the remote sensing architectural conservation. It did create some issues that we had to agree with on a very high level of church cooperation. There had to be a decision made to open the tomb of Christ during the renovation project. A very brave decision, probably something that hadn't been done previously in history, and perhaps never since the original foundation of the church. And that was to open the tomb not for archaeology and not to make these great discoveries, but to make sure that the very burial bed, which is at the core of the structure, is preserved. A moisture barrier was applied on the inside. That particular structure, that tomb was opened only for 60 hours. National Geographic was honored to be there to film and record that. It was unbelievably interesting for the world population. More than 2.5 million people listened and read Kristen Romey's article about this. It was humbling and honoring to be amongst the people who were there to witness that moment. And thank you, Professor Morapulu, for having us be embedded in your team doing this. And it was a great transformation. It was amazing to see these leaders of the church who had made the brave movement to say, yes, we'll do something that we hadn't originally agreed on. And this is their expressions of sort of like eagerness and joy at seeing the original bed of the tomb of Christ. It was an amazing moment. It was going from controversy to enthusiasm. It's something that I think is a metaphor for optimism throughout the world, throughout the Middle East. It's a story that we want to tell at National Geographic. And there it is, the original bedrock. It's the rock of Jerusalem, the bedrock of Jerusalem. I remember personally asking one of the caretakers of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a monk who basically lives inside the church. He's a caretaker. And I said to him, I asked him, what was your feeling? What did you see when that marble slab was removed? And it was kind of interesting. He just looked at me, he said, I saw the rock. And that was satisfaction for everybody. That changed the whole feeling in this church before the restoration and after. We're so excited about that. As Professor Morapulu said, we learned a lot about the structure, the construction of the structure from the architectural renovations. I hope that the digital platform becomes a reality. We will work with you. National Geographic is here to tell the story of this, to rejuvenate a story that in many ways came to conclusion in Easter of 2017. And we're here to rededicate this incredible process and this incredible discovery and preservation so that generations from now, people can think about this and enjoy this monument. I think you provided a lifetime guarantee for the monument. So with that, I would thank you. Please come to visit the exhibition, which will be open through August of 2018. And with that, thank you very much. I would like to bring up our next one.
Thank you so much, Professor Hibbert, for this enthusiastic endorsement of the whole thing. Very uplifting. And now our panel will close with Ms. Bonnie Burnham. Ms. Burnham is an art historian and President Emerita of the World Monument Fund. She joined the fund in 1985 and led its growth into a global organization with affiliates all around the world and hundreds of successful field projects, conservation projects, I mean. Ms. Burnham will make an extended commentary and lead a discussion under the putative theme, reflections and discussion, partnerships and layers of meaning of the Holy Sepulchre project. Bonnie.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Mr. President, Mr. Ambassador, Mrs. Minister, for joining this occasion and sponsoring it and helping to bring this to a very special audience here in America. So you've seen some extraordinary images tonight. You've heard about one of the most complex conservation interventions that certainly I've seen happen in my lifetime under enormous external pressures and delving into the unknown without a time for reflection and careful, step-by-step decision-making, and yet so well orchestrated by the National Technical University in Athens that no one that was associated with the project ever had a moment of doubt that we were following the right course and that it was under completely the most capable hands imaginable. And I really would like to offer another tribute to Antonia Moropoulou and her team, who worked so selflessly and so dedicatedly to bring this about, and so seriously. And you've heard about the inspiration of being part of this process, and particularly from Fred, who came in with wide open eyes and an opportunity to do something that National Geographic was a step in a new direction for National Geographic. And I would really like to commend all of you to visit the exhibition. It's one of the most innovative, if not the most innovative, exhibitions of its kind that I've ever seen, because it really does bring a place alive so that you really feel as if you're there. And in my many years of experience at the World Monuments Fund, I always felt that you could never understand a place without being there, without actually seeing it in person, feeling it and listening to it and experiencing that environment. But this was a very, very close to the real experience and the real thing. And there was a wonderful panel at National Geographic last night where their team talked about the personal inspiration that they had taken from the project, and all of them said without question that it was the keystone of their career, whether they were photographers, videographers, or whatever. This was the most inspiring opportunity they'd ever had. So what I thought I would like to do is talk about a different aspect of this based on my experience in trying to orchestrate the preservation of cultural heritage, trying to get people to listen to what these monuments are trying to tell us, and the impetus from my perspective of how this whole thing began. And tell a kind of personal story of our participation in the project by way of an individual who served as the catalyst and really made it happen, Mrs. Mika Erdogan on the left-hand side. You've seen her in some other pictures. But just to give you a little bit more context, there was another highly important historical event that happened in the last several years that hasn't been mentioned tonight. It was a mass that was held in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in the year 2014 that was conducted jointly by the Pope and the Patriarch of the Greek Orthodox Church, His Beatitude Bartholomew, the Patriarch. And there was who's the second person there on the left, and he's an extremely charismatic person, and the current Pope likewise, and very open to the idea of ecumenicality, of sharing ideas across sects. And these two individuals got along so well that they were willing to take the chance of coming together to try to bring together the people of the world, people of faith, to understand that they have commonality. And Mrs. Erdogan was invited to join this event by her priest, Father Alex, a legendary person in the American Greek Orthodox Church. After the event, I asked her how she felt about it, and she said, it was without any doubt the high point of my life. And she talked about how the Pope and the Patriarch both said that there were really no fundamental differences between them, that they didn't see why Christians couldn't all have an opportunity to share the same values. And so as it happened in 2014, Mrs. Erdogan was receiving the highest award that the World Monuments Fund offers to its donors and to figures around the world who've made a big difference in the preservation of cultural heritage. And she was contemplating a gift to celebrate this occasion that would have meaning, that would underscore the meaning of her being selected. An extremely modest individual in spite of all that she's accomplished in her life and all that she represents to a lot of people. She's not Greek, she happens to be a Romanian, but she worships in a Greek Orthodox church in America. And so after this life-changing experience, she said, I'd really like to do something that underscores faith and that helps to bring people together. So help me find a project. And so that was our challenge. And our challenge was facilitated by another challenge, you might say, that was revealed when in the newspaper in early 2015, there was an article about how the Israeli government was threatening to close the Holy Sepulchre from pilgrims because of the threat to the building, because it was considered to be not stable enough to receive visitors anymore. And so this was a bit of a wake-up call for the Christian communities in Jerusalem. And we, back in New York, trying to contemplate this gesture, what would bring everyone together, people of faith, toward a common understanding of each other, the light went on. And we thought this challenge might just be our opportunity. And so Father Alex picked up the phone, called the Patriarch Theophilus in Jerusalem with no idea really what his response would be to having not a religious international organization that had never worked really closely together with the church to come in as a partner in this project. And Father his beatitude was very, very warm, receptive, and welcoming. And I think that this moment helped to start these wheels turning that resulted in all that happened thereafter. It was a moment, in the lowest moment before dawn comes the opportunity for accomplishments of the next day. And so that was the gesture that then helped lead to the unfolding of many, many more opportunities to confront every challenge that happened in the course of this project. It was the leadership, really, of the Greek Orthodox Patriarch, his courage to take on that responsibility that made it happen. But I think I always, in my life, have relied on luck or providence to see things turn in the right direction at exactly the right moment. And you've seen many, many images, and these are just like the others, but my point here is that the Edicule was in constant use with hundreds, if not thousands, of people every day visiting, and yet nobody really understood the degree of threat that the building was under, that it was really on the verge potentially of collapse, and it was in fact being held up by this 70-year-old scaffolding that was on the verge of failure. And so the Israelis were actually right, although it seemed like something of a staged gesture, they were making their point. None of us, even who were part of the team, realized the degree of urgency of this project until it was underway. And so I think that reveals a paradox that I've encountered many times in my life, that people may regard and respect and care about monuments, but they don't necessarily ever think about what kind of condition they're in and whether they really are in a situation, both in relation to stewardship and condition, that they're really going to survive. And so this was a huge revelation for us, and I think a great opportunity to communicate the challenges of preservation to a wider audience, and maybe encourage more people to think about these issues, open their eyes and open their ears to what these sites are telling us. And so now we have something that looks quite monumental, that really lives up to the spirit of being what it is, a kind of symbol of Christian faith, and a beautiful building in its own right. And I understand the visitation has greatly increased since the restoration was finished. There are many, many more people coming to such a degree that it's almost creating a problem in itself. But the idea of disseminating the National Geographic exhibition around the world, which is being talked about now, is both a way of alleviating some of that pressure and probably also a factor in helping to disseminate the knowledge and the renown of this place. But I think, to me, what this transformed structure represents is an opportunity for a long-term view, a kind of vision for the future of how all of us together have to ensure that the kind of deterioration that happened in the past would not happen again. The kind of catalytic person, the change agent that Mrs. Erdogan was in this case, is a role that's been played by many individuals around the world in relation to monuments and sites that they personally cherish and feel that they have to become the champion of. It can be an individual who has significant means, the means to make a financial gesture of the kind that she did, but it can also be someone who becomes, through their passion, just an advocate for others to rally behind. And I think that's been part of the story of every major project I've been involved with. I've often been amazed and impressed by how much a single individual can accomplish through their advocacy. I think the other thing that this major project has revealed is the layers of value and meaning that are embedded in this structure. It's now seen as an architectural gem. It's always been a spiritual magnet for people of all faiths, even beyond the Christian faiths. It has huge layers of historical significance. And its very context, where it's located within the epicenter of a city that has to struggle every day toward this goal of having people live together in peace and harmony, makes it particularly symbolic, I think, for the idea that faith is not retrospective. It's not only respecting traditional values. It's really a hallmark of what we have to have in order to think forward. And this is, to me, a symbol of faith in the future. And so that is the long view that we now have to embrace when we think about the Holy Sepulchre, not just that we managed to achieve the mission impossible and save this building, but what it will be for future generations. Moments like this are very rare, and I must add my own sense of modest honor at having been part of it, along with so many people who made big sacrifices in order to make it happen. And so on that note, I would like to conclude, but we have about 10 minutes left in our program. There might be a few minutes for questions and answers from the audience, and I think that's going to be directed by someone else. I just want to invite the other two speakers to join me here and maybe ask each of you one question myself before we open it up to the public, if I may do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Can I say something? I had a couple of questions, but I would like to yield my time to the Father Custodian of the Franciscan Order if he wants to make a comment, and I would be very, very honored to hear you, sir.
I'm quite frankly filled with awe and wonder at what has transpired. I don't see how anyone could not be, and to be so deeply grateful. I think gratitude has to be the hallmark of the world towards what was done by the restoration team. And the Franciscans there, the Franciscans inside the Holy Sepulchre always felt that the team brought such reverence and respect to this work that it wasn't just a work, but it was a dedication. And I mean, that kind of reverence and respect we need more of in this world, and it deepens our spirituality. It's an ongoing thing, but our faith is deepened by what you have done, and we can only be so grateful and filled with wonder at this wonderful mystery that has been renewed by you.
I was just going to ask, I think both of you, the same question. This was obviously a very transformative project in everyone's life who worked on it. But is there one single thing that you took away from this project that you might consider to be a contribution to the way you work, to your practice, or a particular challenge that was so intense that you'll never forget it for the rest of your life?
As I said, we learned a lot from this work and from this monument. We learned a lot, but it's not methodological only, and I won't refer to the methodology, because about methodology we have written a lot of scientific articles. We will live with a book that will contain all this and the platform. It's not a matter of sharing the knowledge. It's a matter of sharing the values of this unique monument. And the major lesson learned was respect. Respect and coexistence among different communities, different people. Two different people in conflict in Jerusalem, 3 Christian communities and 3 religions in Jerusalem, the Christians, the Judaism and Islam, and the non-believers. But the major was that all these people, believers and non-believers, were kneeling in front of the tomb of Christ. And that meant to me that each one of us was in front of his own self. And that was not atomism. That was to join the world. And to join the world. And that is the message. The fact that we joined the world all together, virtually, kneeling in front of the tomb of Christ, gave us the power to continue, to accomplish, and to be here, and to continue furthermore. This is the message.
Fred, want to talk about what you took away from it?
Well, I'm humbled to follow Professor Antonio Morpul, who summed it up quite well. It is about the restoration of Almania, but it's really about the people who were involved in that. And I thought this was one of the few projects that I've ever seen people take so many risks to make happen. Things that weren't status quo, that were just decided that whatever the circumstances, whatever the complexities, it had to happen. The restoration had to happen. People had to agree. We had to move ahead. You had to make decisions at split moments. Things could happen that could have gone wrong, and they didn't. And I think that's a pretty remarkable experience. And when we communicate at National Geographic, we try and tell these personal experiences about things. Whether you're out in the Serengeti plain looking at animals, or whether we are covering some oceanographic observation. This project probably involved the greatest number of people agreeing to do risky things and do something that needed to be done, and I think that makes it worthy to tell here and now and for generations to come.
I'm just going to add one little anecdote of my own memory and then turn the program over to a couple of questions from the audience. The moment that comes to mind for me was when I would attend the quarterly meetings of the scientific committee to hear about progress and what was coming forward, what needed to be accomplished at a given time. And at one of the meetings, it was explained that the next step had to examine the end of the edicule opposite the end where you enter it back. And on the back of the edicule was a chapel that was constructed there by the Armenians shortly after the 1810 building, and had never ever been dismantled, even though it was a kind of impromptu chapel in the form of a tent. And thinking very skeptically, are they really going to be willing to take away the chapel that's on the back of the Holy Sepulchre? But this sounds like an insurmountable challenge to get this to happen. And then the next time I came back, the tent was gone. The stones had been removed from the back of the edicule. And with a very, very serious face, Antonia said to me, this would have collapsed in a very short time if you were not intervening now, because that's when they really discovered the degree to which there was moisture inside the building, and that the rock itself was compromised. And that was just a kind of a stunning moment to realize how close we came to actually losing this, and how much faith in the whole operation had been generated just to get that event to happen. So with that, I'm going to ask Aris to come up, and he's been recognized this evening, and invite questions.
Thank you very much, man. It's such a great honor to have the opportunity to coordinate the questions and answers for such a great event. I think personally fascinated by this discussion for several reasons. Like, as an engineer educated in Greece, now living here in the United States, as a subscriber to National Geographic for the great work that they are doing, and I'll definitely renew my subscription. But also as a professional that is also affiliated with BON in terms of like getting the funding and revealing such issues of like ecumenical heritage. And it's great that we're hosting this event at the campus. I'm not going to take advantage of speaking more, sitting here in front of you. I would just would like to open it for you. Please raise your hand and I will pass the microphone. We're going to have like 3 or 4 questions because we're going to have a special, some concluding remarks by Professor Moripoulis. So if we can take like 3 or 4 questions, it would be great.
Well, thank you so much for your wonderful presentations, and thank you for saying in particular. I have a question about the tomb of Christ, and specifically about the marble panel which is in front of the tomb. When the Crusaders came, they put the trantina, the marble slab with 3 holes, which you showed, and which is shown everywhere in artifacts and Crusaders maps and so on. Where exactly it is now located? It is because it is covered now again with the marble slab.
Beneath the outer surface, it is
Beneath the outer
the ground penetrating grave.
Did you find anything behind this trantina? Because the pilgrims used to drop the, all kind of notes or whatever. Find any artifacts or
No artifacts.
No.
Just inner material.
Mm-hmm.
Just that which was put on purpose in order to relax the stresses by the slum.
I'm sorry for having difficulties.
Did they, what was the total cost? And how much more is needed to do any finishing work?
We estimated the works that we suggested after the study before I showed you for the installation of the navigation corridor in the underground, for underpinning of the Sepulchre, for installation of the appropriate sewage disposal network and for rainwater drainage, as well as for the pavement preservation. We estimated it around 6 million euros. The same way that we estimated 3 million euros cost of preservation.
Can you talk a little bit about the water issue? And is this water that has been there since the Roman era, since the Roman Empire? And is it an active water system? Is it just drainage that's coming from the city? Is it an underground brook? And what are the issues surrounding it?
Of course, it is a complex issue. However, I can say that the rainwater from the Christian Street, 10 meters above the level of the pavement of the Sepulchre, is being drained down to the whole Sepulchre, and
the sewage from the whole complex of the Church of Resurrection is disposed underneath the Holy Tomb. And this is the contemporary situation. Of course, we discovered cisterns, and that means that in the ancient years, or in the sequence of the periods, there was water there. And in some instances, there is yet. So we suggest that we have to manage this underground world and the water, which is in many ways disposed and drained in the river.
I was just asking for clarification as to whether, through your investigations, you were able to alleviate some of the water problems?
Yes, indeed, because during the discussions to open the Tomb of Christ, the 26th of October, and we developed these discussions for 2 months with the 3 leaders of the Christian communities. It was obvious that we couldn't open and protect the Tomb of Christ if we wouldn't have managed the water in the cisterns, and we made some efforts for this, but it's not enough because the water is coming and coming, and with infrared thermography we evidenced the rising dam which is coming up through the masonry, and this is a fact, it's not a hypothesis. That's why we felt responsible to deliver the study to address this challenge, and to deliver it.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. 2 questions. The first, an engineering one. Did you find anything unique in the composition of the mortar? And in replacing it, did you do anything unique to try to prevent it from failing again in 70 years? And the second question is your knowledge that you've learned being shared with the restoration of the Church of the Nativity that's going on right now?
I didn't hear well the second part of your question.
No, we were not sharing information. And the Church of the Nativity, it's another regime concerning the governance of the works. And it's a global player company which is doing the works. It is there, I think, for 3 years right now. And the things are ongoing, but knowledge is not shared. I don't know anything. And about the mortar, we are still working concerning the historic mortars we discovered and we sampled within the rock and the masonry. But we had initially started with this, and what we discovered were mainly two categories of mortars. The one is hydraulic mortar, but hydraulic lime was produced from a local clay, which is susceptible to the action of water. It is swelling and degrading. The second category of mortar was gypsum mortar, and that is the mortar they use when they construct in haste. And there are historical testimonies that Komnenos was working in haste, and he used a lot of gypsum mortar. And that was incredibly swelling by the water and was degrading. So these are the major two categories. And when I saw the article, I said, this is a mortar story.
Thank you very much. I forgot to mention, to acknowledge actually the presence of the Minister for Transport, for Infrastructure and Transport in Greece, Mr. Christos Spirtsis, that he's here with us today. I would like to go for one final question. Please, yes.
Professor, do you believe that a future phase, if it's approved, of rectifying the water problems beneath the floor of the church could be conducted with the same access for pilgrims and religious services that you built into your restoration project?
Yes, we have studied this. It's feasible.
We have studied this. It is feasible. We will need 10 months to accomplish this work without developing obstacles to the pilgrimage, neither to the worshiping. Because we have the experience now. We lost 2 months when we started because of many problems. I wouldn't like to refer to problems because we overcame. If we had the decision, we would have gone on. It is feasible.
I would like to turn now to Ms. Professor Moore will kindly request us to say some complete 3 minutes or something. Something that was touched upon the remarks of the Minister's remarks, Mrs. Koniotis' remarks with regards to how all this ties with accounts of the heritage of Greece, particularly with regards to democracy. Professor Moore, please.
Keeping heritage alive, she said, is a concept which is not divided. And today we are here to discuss and honor the Holy Sepulchre project and share the knowledge of it and the perspectives and the problematics. But today for us is a day, you see, National Technical University of Athens in Greece is called Polytechnio. And Polytechnio has two meanings. The second meaning is the uprising of the 17th of November of 73, when the Greek students were resisting against dictatorship, against fascism, against dependence, and we were fighting. And among us, I see Christos Papoutsis and many others. We were fighting for ψωμί, παιδεία, ελευθερία, bread, education and freedom. And that was another union of fighting people from different provenance, different beliefs, different faiths, but we were all together, and we declared through the coordinating committee of the occupation of the National Technical University of Athens, of Polytechnio, we declared our common will against fascism. And when the fascist violence and the tank crashed down the entrance of Polytechnion, then the people stayed there, and it was an uprising of all the people of Athens. It was not only a student case. This case was a case when the people did not surrender to violence. And through this, I would like to say that keeping heritage alive means to keep values alive. The values that are joining different people with different beliefs and to one incredible power, the power that develops democracy, freedom, and that creates the future, and to invite the young generations to take this message and make it their own message, because they are transforming the world. But we have to remember. Thank you very much.
And with this, we're concluding the event tonight. I hope it was joyous and informative and meaningful to most of you. Thank you very much for attending. See you all in the next event of SPGH. Bye-bye.